Welcome back to B2B Growth. I'm Dan Sanchez. My friends call me Danchez. And I'm here with James Carberry, the founder of Sweetfish Media, to talk about thought leadership, because we're still on the journey of learning everything I can about thought leadership. I've read all the books, and now I'm trying to interview all the practitioners, all the experts out there on what they have, because it's not just enough to read sometimes. Sometimes it's good to have the conversations, to even meet with the authors of the books and actually work out what you think they mean, and have worked through all the different methodologies and nuances that don't get covered in all the blogs and books and podcasts you hear, even like this one. Being able to talk to people is a huge part of this journey, and I've been loving it. If you're a learner like I am, you got to do a deep dive like this. It's just so much fun. I've been learning a lot about thought leadership, and one thing I wanted to circle back around is an idea that James first introduced me to just about a year ago, when he introduced me to this idea called collective thought leadership. And ever since then, I've started to have eyes to see other people do this, though I haven't heard anybody else talk about like a term that this thing doesn't really have a name other than what I've heard James call collective thought leadership. So I wanted to go deep into this one aspect that James has been telling me about and open it up a little bit so that you could learn how to implement it at your own company. So James, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, man. This is going to be a fun conversation. We were really heads down on executing this strategy, probably starting about 2 years ago. Did it for a year and a half before we kind of decided to take a different direction with the business. But I think it's a really powerful concept that I think could be implemented at any company that's trying to do thought leadership in a unique and novel way. And so I'm pumped to dive into it.
So to kick it off, let's define like what it is and give an example so that people can kind of imagine what it is. Like, what was the first implementation we saw of it at Sweetfish, and how did you arrive at it?
Yeah, so it started with this show, actually. It started with B2B Growth. And I originally was just trying to figure out, how can we put out more content from B2B Growth? Because we know that the more content we put out from the show, there's more advertising opportunities. The more quality content coming out of the show, the better experience for the listener, because people come to B2B Growth because they want really practical insights on how to do B2B marketing in today's world from practitioners that are actually doing it. So as we started thinking about like, okay, who could we bring on to not just be a guest on episodes, but could we bring on multiple co-hosts of B2B Growth? And then those co-hosts could either do solo episodes themselves, or they could go out and interview other practitioners that they know that are operating at a high level with as it relates to B2B marketing. And so I think I invited like 23 people to be co-hosts of B2B Growth, and it up-leveled the quality of our content and the quantity of our content in doing that. And the thought being like, hey, we have a platform with the show. We're producing the content. So it's a win for them to get to be the co-host of a top 100 podcast. But it's also a win for us because we're getting more content. And we have a variety of different ways that we monetize that content, both through advertising and just through listeners that end up working with us, because this is an execution of our content marketing. So that's how it started. It started with B2B Growth. We had, I think it was right around 20. I think it was 23 co-hosts at one point. And then decided, man, what could this look like to actually build media properties from scratch using this model of having multiple co-hosts that we believed would build a media property much faster if you had, 5, 10, even 15 industry leaders all kind of pointing their audiences back to a particular media property. So we did this with manufacturing with a show called The Manufacturing Show. We did it with B2B sales with a show called The B2B Sales Show. We continue doing it with B2B Growth. We did it with a podcast called the Cybersecurity Podcast. So we experimented with it in a lot of different ways. And I think it was really, really good learning.
Man, so it's essentially like getting a bunch of industry leaders together and then everybody working on one kind of media property at a time. And I imagine there's a number of different advantages to that. Why wouldn't they want to take that same time and focus it back on their own property? Like what's the advantage to every individual if they're all collectively working towards a kind of a property they don't necessarily have full control over?
Yeah, that's a great question. And ultimately, you're capitalizing on the reach of other people. So you can do your own, kind of focus. If you want to make the investment to really grow your own media property, a media property that your brand owns and controls, obviously that's what most people do. But you're going to be limited in terms of the reach of that content if you're over in a silo doing it on your own, where if you go to 4 or 5 other industry leaders that also have reach and can access different pockets of the industry, maybe manufacturing, for example, you have somebody that has a lot to say about AI or has a lot to say about automation. There are different components of an industry. And so your expertise at your company, oftentimes you don't have the in-house expertise to be able to speak to other elements of an industry that people would be interested in. And so I think it allows you to go a little bit wider with content. And I think it allows you to grow an audience much faster when you've got other brands that are pointing resources to it. But you definitely have to have the mindset that we're going to go further faster if we go together, and not every brand. I don't even want to say that that's right for every brand necessarily, but certainly a lot of brands don't necessarily have that mindset. So it'll never be something they do, which makes it a great opportunity for those that do have that mindset.
I think a lot of content marketers will have like some idea of what it means to do like a content collaboration, right? Which usually is just with one other company or one other person. But this is like content collaboration on steroids, right? Because you're finding all the people that, have some influence, maybe not unreachable. They have so much influence, but you have contact with or could get a hold of and have influence, and then pulling all that influence together for everybody else's benefit. I mean, if I'm promoting a collective podcast, but so are 12 other people, yes, I'm pushing my audience to something, but it's not like they forget me. It's not like I lose that audience. They're just checking out other people there. But all those 12 are also pushing their audience there, and maybe they find my episode and download it too, giving me exposure to potentially 12 times the size of my audience for not that much more work. It just seems like it would really accelerate things and, like you said, go farther, faster together. What are some other expressions you've seen this? Because obviously we're in podcasting, so we've tested and played with this in the podcast land. Where else have you seen this done?
Yeah, so I think books are another play where you go and get 3 or 4 co-authors to author a book. Each of you have your name on the front cover of the book, but now instead of just you and your company promoting the book, you've got 3 or 4 other voices in the space that are actively promoting the book as well. And so I think a book is a fantastic execution of collective thought leadership also.
I love it. I've seen, you see that one all the time, right? Where people are like co-author, and they don't even see co-author, because in podcast land we say co-host, but in a book they're just like, I'm the author of. You get almost like 100% of the credibility that comes with writing a book with only like a quarter of the amount of work if you have 4 authors.
Yeah, I think another one, and this one just popped up in my head, but I think if you were to do something like a day in the life type of video content, so almost like a vlog style content, if you went in with, say, 5 other brands and said, hey, we've been wanting to do this type of video content, what if we collectively went in and paid for a videographer, or like, what the D-Rock to Gary Vee, and, one day of the week, he's going to follow our CEO around. Another day of the week, they're going to follow the CEO of this other company around, and, have, 5 or 6 people that are in on that. And then I think that could be a really smart execution too, and a way to get in the game of video without necessarily incurring the full expense of everything that goes into that.
Dang, that'd be awesome. I don't think I've ever seen a YouTube channel implemented that way, but that would totally be doable. You can almost hire a full-time person.
I think you'd have to be pretty selective in curating who you want to be a part of it. Obviously, like anything, you don't want somebody who's super lame co-hosting your podcast. The book is probably a little bit easier to massage because it can go through, a more intense editing process before it sees the light of day. Video might be tough. I mean, if you don't have somebody that's very charismatic, that doesn't come across well on video or is never available, so you're never getting that content from that person, that could be tough. But I think if you do a proper vetting process and you frame it up right, I think you'd find plenty of companies that would want to do it with you.
Hi, Dan Sanchez here with a quick break from this episode's sponsor, Vidyard. If you haven't started using personal video yet to enhance your marketing campaigns, you're missing out. Having the ability to quickly capture video and record my computer screen or both helps me not only create marketing assets faster, it makes them way more personable. I use personal videos in social media, email blasts, landing pages, and even on our website. Vidyard makes it easy to record, host, embed, and share videos to more deeply engage with your ideal buyers. Prospects have told me repeatedly that they are blown away every time they get one from me. So sign up for Vidyard free today by going to vidyard.com/B2B growth. And just like you guys, the team at Vidyard can't keep up with all these promo codes on podcasts. So they are making signing up as easy as possible. So no promo code needed. Just go to vidyard.com/B2B growth. So start using Vidyard completely free. And as a bonus, get their 2021 B2B Video Trends Guide. Yeah, especially if they're in like closer geographic proximity with you. And that would work even if you're serving like a specific region. It gets a little stronger because you can like literally partner with these people and do in events with them. With that, it could really expand out.
One of the things, Dan, that I was, and we might still do this down the road, but I think local service providers, think attorneys, insurance agents, financial planners, people like that, if they were to come together, say 10 or 15 of those types of folks that do business locally, if they started a show that was focused on sharing, success stories in their city, and they branded the show, something like Leaders in Orlando or, something like that, you could do a lot of really cool stuff if each of those 10 people, maybe you've got, and they're non-competitive with one another. So you've got a financial advisor, somebody that does insurance, somebody that is, I don't know, there's tons of local service type businesses. You put all those people together and say, hey, put in $1,000 a month, you get 2 episodes a month, and we're going to pool that money to create a ton of ancillary content to go along and promote the show. But then you could also start to do really cool stuff like putting ads in airports and on the sides of buses and use the different co-hosts as the faces of that media property in a very similar way that you see like news stations do it. And you're not incurring the full cost because you're splitting it with the other people that are your co-hosts of that property. So I think a local execution of this strategy, it was something that we were really looking at and considering doing at Sweetfish. We even started a show called Atlanta Success. And I think we started one called Orlando Success as well. We, lots of ideas, only limited bandwidth for things we can actually execute. But for anybody listening, if you are a service provider that has a high-end, clientele, I think this is a fantastic execution.
Man, it almost makes me sometimes, I'm like, oh, that just sounds so good and so doable. I could almost quit Sweetfish and just go and execute that. Yeah. And just gather up everybody in a specific industry. Let's just pick the wedding industry in like Minneapolis, where I'm from. And I find wedding vendors that all kind of fit your like style and flavor, and then you just work together to market the heck out of the unifying theme. And then everybody's got their own little niche or thing. And I'm like, dude, you would destroy. That'd be really fun too.
I hope somebody listening to this, I mean, the beautiful part of it is, honestly, if 3 or 4 years down the road, Sweetfish, we decide to execute on this, there's no cap on how many local shows there can be. And so somebody could start Denver Success or Leaders in Denver or whatever, and we could come in 3 years from now and start another local show working with other local leaders in the area. And then it just becomes a game of who can promote and market the show better. And not even better. I mean, because people could listen to Leaders in Denver and Denver Success. And get value from it, just like, most people listen to way more than one podcast. So it's something where multiple people can win by executing this, even at a local level in the same city.
So in the same way, it's kind of taking what in the business world we call like a joint venture and just bringing a bunch of people together to share and split marketing costs. I mean, this isn't unheard of. People have been creating like associations or I forgot what, there's another word for it, that pull together money for massive advertising budgets. It's just that now we're talking about it in a much more intimate content marketing, an inbound marketing style. Like in the outbound marketing style, like we all remember the Got Milk campaign, which was all the farmers pulling together their money to drive up the demand for milk, which everybody remembers that. Unfortunately, it was unsuccessful because milk consumption still went down. Fun fact.
This also, though, this approach, I think, is very conducive to how you and I see marketing happening over the next 10 years, which is it's much more centered around a human and less centered around a corporate logo. And so, especially for the service profession, like, insurance folks and financial planners and maybe even the local dentist, like, you want to know the face behind that brand because that's who you're working with. And so doing something like this allows you to showcase the faces of these different people. And then you think about like the different in-person activations that you can bring to life as well. When you've got 10 different people that are a part of this show doing a quarterly meetup or, something where that you're really creating meaningful community. And so even if every quarter, each of those 10 hosts went back and invited the 6 guests that they invited to the show, and there was an in-person event that they put together where everybody brought the guests that they had on the show and did a dinner or something like that, big barbecue outside somewhere, like, I just think it would be a really fun way to go to market, to legitimately market your business, but in a way that where there's also learning from your peers, there's sustained relationship building with the guests that you've had on the show. There's just so many things you can do with it.
It certainly makes a lot more sense to me than just paying to sponsor an event where you're one logo among many logo. Maybe your logo is slightly bigger than your competitors up on the wall and in the brochure that nobody reads and the signage that nobody sees in the conference halls,
Exactly.
Right? It just doesn't even make sense. But in this case, you're actually leading with creating value with people that are complementary to you and are sending value that way. You're creating a whole media entity in yourself. We talk a lot about creating a media shop or a media company within your company, right? And this is one of the clever ways to do it and only have like a fraction of the cost associated with it.
I think you're exactly right.
So there you go. Is there anything else that we left on the table, James?
No, man. I mean, this honestly feels like I was a little bit hesitant jumping on here. Like, man, this is a strategy that I very much want to execute both at an industry level and a local level. And so part of me is like, man, there's thousands of people that listen to this. Somebody going to beat us to it if we share it. But honestly, I think multiple people could win executing this. And I know it's not on our roadmap for at least a few years at this point. And so I really hope somebody listening to this takes it, catches a vision for it, and really makes something happen with it. Because I think a whole lot of people could win.
Yeah. There's so much abundance. There's so much to be had that I felt like it'd be fine even if 5 people heard it and took it and ran with it.
Yep.
I'm like, gosh, there's just so much that you could do with this. So awesome. Well, James, thanks for joining me on your show. And
thanks for doing this, man. I'm super pumped. Your last deep dive on demand gen was like drinking from a fire hydrant for me. So
Leslie
I'm
did demand
excited.
gen. I was ABM, remember?
Oh, you were ABM. Leslie did.
I was ABM.
Demand gen. Both of the deep dives have been awesome. So the thought leadership deep dive is, I'm looking forward to these things going live. So thanks for having me be a part of it.
Oh yeah. Bring in the fire. So for everybody listening, if you like this episode, please go tap that rating button in your podcast player of choice to let us know that you liked this, and come talk to James and I on LinkedIn. We spend a ton of time there. And honestly, both of us are talking to people all the time. Hit us up in the DMs. I answer any genuine question that comes by me in a comment or a DM. I'm answering, sometimes with the video message. So come find us.
Unless you try to sell me something, I respond to DMs as well. So go to ratings, tap the number of stars you think we deserve. We're not even going to ask you to leave a review, honestly, because they don't matter that much. Ratings really seem to be what Apple cares more about. So love you all a ton. Dan, thanks for letting me be a part of this one, man.
Thank you. And thanks for listening to B2B Growth.
For the longest time, I was asking people to leave a review of B2B Growth in Apple Podcasts. But I realized that was kind of stupid because leaving a review is way harder than just leaving a simple rating. So I'm changing my tune a bit. Instead of asking you to leave a review, I'm just going to ask you to go to B2B Growth in Apple Podcasts, scroll down until you see the ratings and reviews section, and just tap the number of stars you want to give us. No review necessary. Super easy. And I promise it will help us out a ton. If you want a copy of my book, Content-Based Networking, just shoot me a text after you leave the rating and I'll send one your way. Text me at 407-490-3328.